Can we switch our speakers to silent for a bit? So I'm getting feedback. Awesome, brilliant. Good evening. Thank you for attending this digital meeting of Schools Forum. As Chair, I would like to welcome Schools Forum members and council officers and any members of the public who may be viewing this later when it's uploaded to YouTube. Before we begin, I'd like to address some housekeeping measures. The agenda and papers for the meeting are available on the Council's website. If the meeting becomes inaccessible, then I will adjourn the meeting to allow for reconnection. If access cannot be restored, then the meeting business will be considered another day. To proceed and confirm your quorum, I will introduce myself and call each Schools Forum member in attendance one by one to introduce themselves and to confirm that they can see and hear the proceedings. So I'm Max Valakis and I'm Chair of Forum. Paul, Neil, can you go through the list of everybody else as a roll call, please?
Yeah, of course, no problem. So, Mr. Andy Seeger.
Yeah, present.
Lovely. Mrs. Kathy Draper.
Hi Neil, yeah, Kathy Draper, head at Shorteeth Federation. I can see and hear everything fine.
Thanks, Kathy. Michelle Sheehy. I don't think she's
Neil, Michelle now is no longer she's no longer on Schools Forum. Her last meeting,
okay.
Her last meeting was the last one, and members voted because she was the primary representative. Members have voted Amanda Arnold, who is the head teacher of Dow's Junior and Infant School, as their representative on Schools Forum.
Okay, thank you, Chair, for that. Okay, moving on then. So where was that? Jenny Garrett.
Hi, yeah, I'm here and I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Davis.
Yeah, I'm here. I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Mark Moody.
Good afternoon. Yes, present. I can see and hear. Thank you.
Siobhan Bowen.
Yes, present, and I can see and hear everything.
Leslie Foster.
Yes, I can see and hear everything. Thanks.
Michael Fox.
Yes, present, and I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Christine Fraser.
Yeah. Yes, present and all fine here.
Thank you. Ian Baker. Ian Baker.
Yes, I'm here. I can see and hear everything. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Elise Phillips.
Yeah, I'm here. I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Okay. Natalie Boyes. Natalie Boyes. Chris Berry.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm present and I can see and hear everything.
Thank you. Jay Barr. No. Stephen Pritchard Jones.
Yes, I'm here and I can see and hear everything. Thanks.
Mr. Hopkins.
Hi, everyone. I'm here and I can see and hear everything.
Thank you very much. Do we have Amanda Arnold? No. Finally, Billy Downey. Okay, no, and Helen Keenan, I think submitted late, substitute late. Apologies, Chair. So do you need me to go through the observers as well, Chair? Are you on mute? Apologies. Chair, you're on mute.
Sorry, yes, you can do. You go through the observers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Toe.
Thank you, Neil. Yes, Councillor Chris Toe, Cabinet Member for Education and Skills at Walsall Council. I can see and hear.
Thank you, Councillor Toe. Sharon Guy.
Yes, afternoon, everybody. I can see and hear everything.
Thank you. Kate Barr. Kate. Dawn Morris.
Dawn's retired.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Dawn's now retired from the authority, Neil. So it's myself, Richard Wally. And Richard Wally here in terms of finance.
Okay. Thanks very much, Lloyd. Okay, Chip. Over to you, unless you want me to do the officers too.
No, I'll just say there are a number of officers in attendance who always speak in rate. I would just ask, it'd be grateful if they could introduce themselves when it's time to speak, because that'll probably make it easier. And any apologies, Neil? Nick, sorry.
Yes, Chair. No, it is Neil, Chair. You're quite right. So we've got apologies from Anthony Orlick, Sharon Kelly, Margaret Turley, Helen Keenan, and Billy Downey, Chair.
Fabulous. Thank you. Right, let's move on then to the minutes of the 7th of December. I'm assuming, obviously, that as usual, that everybody's read those minutes. Can we just go through the minutes for accuracy? So I'll give everyone a minute just to look over those minutes. Are there any matters arising from?
Can I just say, Chair, I did give my apologies. I couldn't be in attendance. I don't know if it's registered on the minutes.
Okay, can we make sure that they're included, please?
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any matters arising from those minutes at all from anyone? Oh, Kathy, you've got your hand.
Thank you. I have, yeah. Thanks, Max. Yeah, can I just add on items 7 and 8, the Send Improvement Programme update and so on, just for a full picture, really. So it said that I'd been involved in an autism outreach service development, a limited pilot. But can we just add that that's through the Children and Young People's Autism Early Intervention Project Group, please? Did you get that, Neil? Children and Young People's Autism Early Intervention Project Group, because it reads as though it was me doing it and it wasn't. It was a group project.
That's fine. I can update those. Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
So anybody else there with any matters arising? Okay, then. Oh, there is something. I'll do that for next for late items. But there's nothing else arising from those minutes. So Neil, can we put those in as being an accurate record, please?
Sure.
Late items. There are 2 late items. There's one that's been requested by Kathy around high needs funding, and a question that came up literally right at the end of. Just about 5 or 10 minutes ago as a late item, and I think it came through as a discussion point about substitutes at school forum to be discussed. And I think it was basically around if a member is not able to attend, about them having a substitute for votes, etc. That does sort of, it's quite an interesting one, because it does lead to the point then that then schools forum members are there to represent their particular phases. So rather than it being in inverted commas an independent vote, it's actually your representative of your phase if you're carrying a substitute vote, because obviously having a substitute vote could go left or right, depending on how you see it. There is going to be a report done. I think Helen was a little bit concerned right at the very end that this could be decided now, but I feel that, and I don't know what other members feel, that maybe we should listen to the report in the next meeting before we vote on whether to have substitute members, because without knowing the full sort of, as it's only literally just come up, without knowing the full implications of that, it sort of doesn't quite right with me around that. Mike, your hands up.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Going back into the dark and distant past, when I used to chair the primary forum when I was a primary head, we had this arise then, and it was taken for granted that different phases of education in Walsall needed appropriate representation. And if one person couldn't come, then the area of the education system that they represented were just given an opportunity to send a substitute, and that person used to turn up and announce themselves as a substitute. So it's not uncharted territory you're going into. This did happen before. And I know you've got the issue about, well, on what basis are you voting, or who are you representing, or whatever, but that's what used to happen. That was just for information, Max. Okay.
Yeah, and I think there is something that from what the message that we received right at the very end from Neil, that there is something in the good operation of the operation and good practice guide, saying that the local authority must make arrangements to enable substitutes to attend and vote where appropriate at schools forum meetings. This applies to school members, academy members and non-school members. The arrangements must be decided in consultation with school forum members. And Neil said, would it be helpful to draft a paper for the meeting scheduled for March? As it doesn't really affect, I suppose, does it really affect this meeting? Would that be something that members would like to vote on now, or wait till the paper's drafted? Because really, the question, I think that there's potential issues here with regards, as Mike has just said, and who sits for who. For instance, if you're a primary and you're a primary academy and you have a place, your representative swap over should be another academy. It shouldn't necessarily be another primary school. And so I think without having a paper with some specific guidelines to it and who can replace who, could lead to a very difficult situation where rightly so, one phase might say, actually, we could have done that vote if we were going for a particular vote. Well, that vote was contentious because the replacement was from a completely different sector of our school communities. So I think it would be a sensible approach would be to have Neil produce a paper. Are colleagues in agreement with that, or would they like to go? Sorry, Neil and Kathy, have you got your hands up? Kathy, are you about the next thing or this thing?
This thing, yeah, I think.
Neil.
Yeah, that's true. Mike says academies weren't an issue in the past, and yes, it would need to be representative. I thought it was the case that you could send somebody else in your place, but that they couldn't vote.
No, according to this, they can. What we're going to be discussing is whether they can actually vote.
Yeah.
And I think the good practice guide says, and I think they're realising that, you know, with COVID and various other things as well, that sometimes people can't make meetings, and actually, if we're looking at representation, rightly so, there could be a moment where there's an important vote coming, and a phase might be underrepresented in that particular vote. So I think it's sensible, but I think we have to make sure that we do it in a way that doesn't make it more contentious, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Neil, your hands up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to highlight actually that when I do bring the report back, what isn't unusual in these circumstances is that we ask for a named substitute. And also it's important to remember that in order to sit on schools forum, it's best practice and good practice to have training, because of the decisions that you quite rightly point out you asked to make. So, you know, whether the substitute would also be required to undertake some training before they do so. So if you are willing to give me a little bit of time to produce a paper on this for the next meeting, I'll be more than happy to do so.
Thank you, Neil. Tim.
It was just to say that in previous times, I was a named substitute on Staffordshire Schools Forum for the PVI area, and to be the named substitute, I had to attend as an observer 2 schools forums prior to being able to do that, and you had to kind of agree that you would make yourself aware of what had been discussed before, so you had an awareness of what happened in the schools forum before you just did it, so that you were truly representing the phase that you were there to represent, rather than just being a body or a tick on the attendance chart. But it was just to share that as an experience.
Thanks, Tim. Also, Neil, the other bit as well is we have a school forum. We have an expectation of attendance. What the other thing that we wouldn't want to see is that's affected by just having a substitute every time. So, you know, if you're expected to attend schools forum and then literally every single schools forum you don't attend, that's also not particularly appropriate, is it? So I think there's still that rule that we have. I think it's, if you've missed a certain number, we usually write to that person to say, are you still wanting to be in, you know, etc. There are sort of things that we do to say if someone's not turning up for meetings, and you know, and I think that's going to be important to keep that in mind when we're having substitutes as well.
Absolutely, thanks.
Okay, that's brilliant. So we'll have that report for the next meeting, and we'll vote on it next meeting. Makes sense, doesn't it? Brilliant. Thanks, colleagues. Now over to you, Kathy. High needs funding. Yours was the other late item.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just a quick update when I was kind of going through tonight's papers. We haven't got this on the forward plan. So, you know, we had the high needs funding working group and we developed the model and the banding document and all of that. And then nothing's happened on that for quite a while. So that group hasn't been running for probably 6 months really. So just to keep colleagues informed that we plan to bring that group back together. So meetings are planned from next week and mapped out through till the end of summer term. So we'll need to be feeding that back. It'll need to go on the agenda for forum so that we're keeping colleagues informed all the way through. So if we can have that on the forward plan, I know we'll have a discussion about the forward plan later, but just to add that. That's it.
Okay, have you picked that up, Neil? We'll put that on for further discussion when we're doing the forward plan. Neil, the next bit is for you. Are there any, it's the number 6 is that you make a statement about the Local Government Access to Information Act.
Certainly, Chair. So this is the moment in time where the committee would decide whether or not to move into private session through the Local Government Access to Information Act 1985, but there are no papers on today for private session, and so we don't need to do that, Chair.
Fabulous. So we'll then move on to number 7, which is update on the SEND Local Improvement Programme and EHCPs. Jude Nash is here. I don't think I've seen Alex here as well.
Hello.
It just looks like Jude's here at the moment. And but so I'm assuming everybody has read, you know, that document that came out from Jude and Alex, or from Alex. Has anybody got any questions for Jude on that, or Judith? Sorry, not Jude.
No, Jude's fine.
Jude's fine. Sorry, Jude. I didn't want to insult you by shorting your name. So, has anyone got any questions for Jude? Chris has. Oh, there's lots of questions lighting up. It's lighting up. So we'll start off with Chris.
Thanks, Max. Mine was just I don't know whether it might have just been mine, but the on page page 11, the stock take was really badly corrupted, and I couldn't make out some of the fonts. Could that just be circulated separately? So we get that information.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Thank you.
Leslie?
Yeah, I had that problem as well. I've got a few things really. Sorry, it's not just like one.
That's okay.
I'm not really sure who the right person is to answer all the various bits, but one of the first things on the stock type bit, the cow production one, the red's now vanished on it, but the embedded bit's vanished as well. So how can it have been embedded and then have disappeared? I don't quite get that bit.
Don't answer each at a time, Leslie. Jude, can I take that?
I'm going to struggle with that, to be honest. From only being in the local authority since November, the stock take was something that was done before my time, and Sharon's not here and Alex isn't here tonight either. And both of those people would be the people that would be able to direct those answers. If I can take anything about stock take back to Sharon and circulate it back to the forum, if that's okay. Any other areas are absolutely fine, but questions about stock take is not something I'm going to be able to answer tonight.
Can I ask Neil? Can I ask you to?
Sorry, the milestones bit.
So Les, can I just, Leslie? Can I ask Neil? Could you just make a note of Leslie's questions that Judith has to take back, so that we make sure that they're answered for her? Sorry, Leslie. Carry on.
Right. Yeah. I was querying the you know, when it says on the milestones, 3.3 compliance update, it talks about the goal of 60% for January issued in 20 weeks. I just wondered if you feel that is actually something that we can achieve.
So the goal is by the 1st of March we'll be achieving 60%, and we're working towards that throughout January and February. The reasons why it is achievable are numerous, really. Firstly, we've totally transformed the way that the team are working. We are working on casework in the way that sort of local authorities do with one child, one case officer. We've started to break down the tasks that are involved with each of the cases, and we're starting to take that as a team approach. so that where we have a weekly agenda now of every single task that has to be completed week by week in order to achieve those 60%. So for the last 2 weeks, the first week in January and the second week in January, we achieved everything but 2 tasks that weren't completed, and that was due to information advice being missing from education psychology, which again is something that we're chasing within our service. So out of the possible 47 tasks last week, 45 were completed within time. So we're starting to get on the right lines of seeing those outcomes being achieved week on week, which will then, when we come to the 20-week timescale, that will bear itself out at the later part of the process. We have the team now focusing on very specific tasks. So we have people focusing on drafting EHC plans. We have people focusing on decision making. We have people focusing on quality assurance, on consultations. So everybody's now got a very specific role during the recovery programme, and they have a very specific time within each of those tasks. So it's being broken down to very, very small tasks rather than one big sort of 20-week overview, if that makes sense. So within that, it is very achievable. I think the problem that we've had in the past is that we have still got this significant statutory assessment review backlog, which we'll be working on and aiming again to clear by the 1st of March. Every time we issue an out-of-date EHC plan, it brings our timeliness down. So lots of local authorities have got backlogs, and we're reporting on the backlog. We're reporting on the current assessment cases, which are in 20 weeks, and they will be reporting on everything together. So we should be able to see that once that review, the statutory assessment backlog starts to come down, our timeliness should start to go up. So we're tracking both those datas now.
Yeah. I was just going to query. I mean, we have sort of been here before, haven't we? I mean, Carol will say with me, you know, we got it up to 60%, and it looked as if everything was working, and then it fell away again. I know you're hopeful now that we're going to get it straight back up. How are we going to capture the feedback on the quality of these plans?
So I have a working group starting in the next couple of weeks where one of the things we'll be looking at the quality of EHC plans and the purposefulness of them. We have to look at the EHC template in itself, because I think there are issues within the actual template that don't lend itself particularly well to the things that schools are doing within children, with the things that schools do, the provision that schools do, but also preparation for adulthood, key transitions, independence, etc. So we know there's some key areas missing from our EHC templates. We've got a lot of work to do to redesign our template, and that'll be something that we've done with schools, with parents, with all stakeholders to make sure that's fully co-designed. In terms of the quality assurance areas that we've been working on, we've introduced a new quality assurance framework, which is based on a DFE project called EHC Journeys. It's very accessible on the internet. You can Google it and find it. And that found common themes within parents' journeys through the EHC process. We've taken on key aspects of that EHC Journeys and put into a quality assurance framework, and we're using that now. So it's much bigger than a tick list. It goes down to service delivery, about the lived experiences of parents and children, and the delivery of the provisions, specificity, etc. So it goes much, much deeper than a tick list quality assurance, which I think is what we've had in the past.
Okay. So hopefully you'll be able to feed back on that. Just two other things, and I'm not really sure who's the right person really, but the item on the specialist provision, SEND sufficiency, we've been talking about that for a long time. I keep hearing about it. It's saying on the stock take, and that, you know, it's going on and everything's happening. I'm just wondering, is actually a timeline on this in terms of this review being completed? Because it seems to have been in the pipeline for a long time. Now, I'm not sure whether that's your area really, is it?
Apologies, it's not, no, but I can take that any question like that I can take back and get those answered for you.
Do you want me to come back on that?
Yeah,
if that's okay,
please.
Yeah, and Kate's joined us tonight as an observer as well. So for those of you who aren't aware, myself and Kate Barge, the head at North Star Federation, are working on a 6-month there she is, she says hello, a 6-month part-time secondment to the local authority to work on exactly this. So the specialist provision review group starts again on Thursday. So Kate and I, along with local authority colleagues, have worked over the last, well, since before Christmas actually, just before Christmas, on revising and updating the action plan that was written last year. So that's pretty much done now. There are, I can't remember how many streams of work, but there's a lot of streams of work anyway, a good number of which have already started or are set up and in place. The Specialist Provision Review Group meets again this Thursday, so I don't think we've met for, I can't remember now, quite some time anyway, but that's starting again this Thursday and is timetabled in for every 3 weeks. The meetings that we'd had previously for that group, I think progress hadn't been perhaps as we'd have wanted it to be, but we have, and Kate's made some fantastic documents that document the actions that are needed to be taken, the timelines against which we'll be working for those, with the understanding that there are some really urgent needs for September particularly, and then sort of short, medium and long term as well. So you should be able to see some really quick movement on that actually over the rest of this term, through summer term and beyond that, because it's a bigger piece of work than that. It's a long-term piece of work. And Kate and I will be reporting back to, we have already started feeding back to colleagues in schools. So we spoke to primary heads last week and to secondary heads earlier on this week. So you should start to see some quick movement on that, Leslie. Kate, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, that was it, Kathy. I think we were very much the same as you. You know, when is this ever going to end? But actually, as Kathy said, there's a short term. There's some some immediate pieces of work that need to be done for September and the autumn term. There's medium and there's a long term as well. So it's going to pick up with pace, but there is a bigger picture and a longer term view as well with it, which is actually what we need to do.
And Kathy, just a quick interjection on that. How does this differ from what Andy Crabtree did? You know, when he did that specialist provision review, and it was quite an intensive one.
Yeah, it follows on from that. So that was part of the, so the information that he pulled together was feeding into needs analysis and gap analysis and so on. That was a little while ago. So we're looking at some more updated information as well. So that's where we're at the moment. We've spent quite a lot of time over the last week or so looking at what needs we have in Walsall that we know of. Obviously what places we've got in special schools and in specialist provisions, and then looking at the gap. And so now we're kind of more at the planning stage about what we do about that. So that is, like Kate says, it's moving on at a pace. It's probably worthwhile us updating forum at every meeting, I would have thought, as part of that. If we feed into the SEN update, I think.
Yeah, we can add that in, Neil, please. Leslie, have you finished your questions now?
The only other thing I was querying was the local offer is no longer showing any red. It's showing as if it's fine. I'm just wondering if anyone knows if there's been any feedback on it from schools or from parents or anything, because it's not really telling us anything.
Jude?
I think as far as I'm concerned, the local offer is going to come at our milestone 5, which is part of the transformation stage. So once we've tackled the recovery, got rid of the backlogs, that will give us more time and scope to be more transformational. I think that's certainly when the local offer needs to come in. But it means start looking at various areas on the local offer, and also look into some local authorities who've won awards for their local offer and see what we can learn from there. There's so much scope and things that we can do with the local offer in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Why is it, why is it all green and purple if there's, so many issues still to sort out, really? That was my question, I suppose. Oh.
Have you got an answer to that, Jude? Jude, have you got an answer to that?
I think probably, I always talk about good to great to aspirational, and I think where I'm aiming for is aspirational. I think possibly where the stock take is recognising that a lot of improvements have already been made, and we're at that level of good, but things can still be better. There's always room for improvement wherever you are at, and certainly my part of the project is about taking it to transformation. So this part of our project is called Achieving EHC Pathways, and part 2 is Transforming EHC Pathways. And that's when we really need to start thinking about some quite visionary practice and really thinking outside the box on some of the things we want to do.
So, yeah, okay. So on there, what you say, Leslie, is that it seems very aspirational and rather than straight up good. Is that what we're saying where we're at? Andy, you're next.
Sorry, Max, technical issues. Afternoon. Just a couple from me. Mentioned about special school places, and we know there's a demand on them. Have we got any more numbers in terms of places available? Said there was going to be a review on them, but I can't see how hard that is. It'd just be a case how many spaces are available for our kids in Walsall.
Do you want me to come in on that one as well?
Yeah.
Andy, that's what the specialist provision review group's doing.
Okay.
So we've got all of those numbers. So the point we're at the moment is that we know the number of EHCPs we've got. We're kind of projecting forward to know how many we predict we might have. And there's a lot of modelling that sits behind this, lots of very clever formulas in Excel spreadsheets. So that's where we're at the moment. So we know our numbers currently, both in terms of EHCPs, predicting EHCPs going forward, knowing about of those EHCPs, how many of those can we reasonably predict would need special school places. So it's not just looking at what we've got now, but obviously looking at 5-10 years ahead and so on. So we've got that information. We know how many places there are in schools, so we know what the gap is, and that's the point that we're currently at.
So that data you've got, if you've got that there, can that be shared? Because I think that's something that heads really need to know, don't they, in Walsall, where they go, right, we might have, for example, in my school, 22 pupils, we're pushing through for special school places, but there's another 14 secondary schools, they might have any. Same with primary, we just need to know.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point, Andy, and I think so. The Specialist Provision Review Group, and I mentioned it, were you in WASH when
Kate I was in WASH, yeah.
Popped in on Monday, yeah. So the Specialist Provision Review Group, the membership is all of the special school heads, plus other types of settings as well, so PRU and others, short stay schools, plus primary representation, plus secondary representation. So that's the vehicle by which we'll be able to feed back that information, because it's vast, Andy, honestly. So Simon Rogers is the secondary representative on that group. So he will be aware of all of that because he'll be attending the meetings, and that's the mechanism by which you'll be able to kind of get that information.
Yeah, maybe I've been too simplistic. I just thought it'd be an easy one then, where okay, there's going to be X amount of spaces in September 22 for primary pupils and secondary pupils, or I might be going a bit too simplistic with that. Yeah,
because we know what places we've got now, but we also know that that's not enough. So it's kind of it's kind of predicting forward. So I think you're right. It's not as simple as that.
Can that be shared in the next meeting, Max, as well?
We can give an update on the progress of the group. Yeah.
Yeah. And then secondly, have we got? We said that there's a shortage. You can see with educational psychiatrists. Walsall have secured some more. How many have we got, or how many are we short? Are we fully staffed in the Send area now? It's something that's been brought up in previous meetings, and sometimes there's 3 jobs advertised. Then we said we're fully secure. Where are we, Judith, in that?
Yeah, no. When the team aren't fully staffed, we're using locums currently to make sure to meet that capacity. So with the locums, we are at the EP capacity. In order to support this project, you may see some jobs advertised for additional EP, and that is for the recovery part of the project. So we've got the educational psychology service, which are staffed through permanent staff and locums. We're also recruiting about 4 additional educational psychologists to support us through this recovery project. So we'll actually be over educational psychology capacity in order to make sure that we complete this timeliness part of the project, is getting rid of the backlog, etc., to make sure we get back on time for the 1st of March.
So in order to get rid of the backlog, will we have to, I don't know whether that was me or not, the interference, do we have to appoint these first?
No, we are on top of it, but we need more capacity in order to keep going at the speed that we're going at. So there's a very high turnover of our recovery cases. We have a lot of children in draft, a lot of children ready to finalise. We need to make sure that we have those EP information and advice secured throughout it.
Hi Jude. On Max. I was reading the obviously the code of practices and stuff. But we happen to have, and I'm not sure because I know if you're fully aware how they work. But we've got two groups or two federations in the local authority that offer SEN advisory role. North Star being one, Cadmus being the other, and they could be helping with reducing some of this HCP stuff.
That would be amazing, Max. That's an amazing offer.
Arrange a meeting maybe afterwards with myself and
that would be amazing. That would be absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, have a chat about how we can help with that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And just one more thing, sorry, Max, and it came from the WASH meeting, and I said to the chair I'd mention it regarding the amount of F4 forms coming into schools at the moment. Now, just an example, one school's got 22 come in, one school's got 27. But I know following a meeting with yourself, Judy, some of these kids are exactly the same kids that our Senkos are working hours on. So how can we reduce that? Because the amount of forms, 5 schools received the same form for one child. So you can well imagine, and that's across the whole of Walsall, you can well imagine the hours that goes into it. Absolutely. And when we speak it, oh, you haven't even been named, you're 5th on the list.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do to stop that? Because the time's precious, isn't it, for every
absolutely. The head teacher working group that we've got started, one of the things that I'd like to talk to them is the F4 form, because it comes up nearly daily in my way of working and in the conversations that I have. The F4 form clearly doesn't work for schools, doesn't work for Senko. The amount of time that goes into those is just not feasible for a working Senko. So we need to have a think of a different way. Equally, we do have some legalities over consultations, because we do have the code of practice which guides us quite clearly our statutory duties, and we have to consult with parents' preference, but we also may consult with like a nearest to need school or another viable option for a school. So we need to somehow notify schools of where you are in terms of parental preference, or whether it's a local authority preference. We need to have those conversations earlier and in a better fashion than what we currently are at. But the working party that we've got set up for the head teachers is the F4 forms is definitely on the agenda to talk about as soon as possible.
Okay, is there nothing we can do in the interim with this there? Because you know, we've got Senkos working on with different schools, and they might be 5th choice, mightn't they?
I know.
Would that not just be an email out to let all schools know where they're at?
Possibly, Andy. Actually, that might be a good idea. Yeah. I don't know the logistics of that. But if I can check back with my team tomorrow to see if that's actually, if we can email the schools to let you know where you stand, whether it's parental preference or whether it's a local authority preference. I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure. It sounds like it would be possible, but I'm not 100% certain what the data looks like in terms of the operational team data. So I'll have a look at that.
I can share that with WASH.
Yeah. The other thing that we've been doing is Brian Davis, who's the interim team manager, has been meeting the schools and the Senkos to give them sort of an idea of where the children are and going through those lists to let them know. Because clearly you might think you've got 25 children coming to school and actually only 10 of those are first choice preference, etc. So but Fran's been doing one-to-one meetings with some of the Senkos to talk through some of those, especially the schools that have got high numbers of F4s, talking through those particular children and letting you know what actually the realistic number is of attendees for September.
Okay. All right. Cheers, Max.
Okay, thanks, Jude. Interesting enough, although it seems to be on this a lot, don't you, Kathy? You're next on the list. Did you have a question, Kathy?
Thank you. Yeah, I've got some questions and some observations, really. I feel for you, Jude, because you're the only representative here, aren't you? Really?
I can't answer everything.
No, you can't. You can't quite rightly. It's a shame. Yeah, it's a shame we haven't got anyone else.
Yeah, I do apologise, but he is quite poorly. He's not at work at the moment. Hasn't been for a few days. So
okay. So I just wanted to kind of pick up on what Leslie said about the stock take. I don't know this, apart from the EHC plan part of it, Jude, that's not you. But I think what colleagues need to note, and we all need to be thinking about here, is it's one thing knowing what progress we've made in terms of whether that piece of work has been done, it's completed, embedded, and so on. What that doesn't tell us, nothing there tells us about the quality of that piece of work on any of those areas. So we've mentioned local offer already. Actually, I've heard some feedback on the work that's been done on the local offer and some concerns about it from FACE, and I'm sure FACE will have fed that back through. I know they've met with John Dunning and with Sharon. So that the local offer isn't necessarily what we'd want it to be yet, but also around co-production. There is still some niggles around that, and of course the EHCP timeliness. So I think the concern, what we need to think about is, okay, that stock take tells us one thing, but what it doesn't do is tell us how well that's been done. And I think, bearing in mind that we're likely to have a SEND local area inspection again next month, that doesn't do it, does it? So that, you know, it's kind of what sits behind that. So in terms of informing us about progress, it doesn't necessarily give us everything we need to know. Again with the stock take and the dashboard that we've got for EHCP timeliness and for annual reviews and so on. So the most recent data on that is October, which I think we've had that data before. Is there more recent data than that?
Yes, definitely. It's definitely more high level timeliness in November. I think it was November on the stock take, or is it October?
It's October.
Yeah, no, definitely had December's figures are definitely back. I don't want to say the actual number out loud because I don't want to be misquoted later on. But the conversation that I've had with the data performance is that it's been the highest number that it has been in the last 4 years. So I don't know what the actual figure is. I want to say 48%, but I don't want to say that just in case I'm wrong.
No, I don't blame you.
But I know the data performance said that it's the highest number that's been over the last 4 years.
But I think the point is as well to make sure that we're all getting up to date information, because we want to be able to celebrate that as well, don't we? Okay. Yeah, that's kind of been covered really. To pick up on what Andy said about EPs as well. So we know the national position for recruitment of EPs, don't we? We know how hard it is. But I think, so we know we're short of EPs. We know we've got locums in to handle, you know, to help us with that backlog and getting up to speed. But the implication of that, and I think, you know, relating it to COVID as well. So for us in schools, our EP service, the sessions that we'd got for spring term have now got to do us for spring term and summer term. So actually we've got fewer EP sessions in school for the rest of this academic year. So there are quite significant implications for that, aren't there really? So obviously, so they're being signposted to tackle EHCP timeliness, you know, understandably, but that means then that we're not getting our EP reports through as quickly as we would want them in school. That then has an implication for how quickly we can get to the point of requests for assessment. And then that has a knock-on for how long it takes us to get an EHCP through once that process has started, which then has a knock-on to our budgets and also implications for high needs funding and being able to predict that. So that just that difference of EP provision over that term actually has a knock-on quite a lot of things that affect all of us. So I think we need to be aware of that. And then, you know, and Andy had said about how many EPs we've got. It'd be really interesting to know how many EPs we've got now, whether they be locum or, you know, permanent, but how that compares with numbers over time. So how much of a capacity have we needed to add over a number of years, given the increase in need? And then similarly, I wondered how are locums paid? Is it like, and forgive me because I probably should know this, but is it like supply teachers where you kind of bring through an agency, so are they more expensive than?
Yeah. So they are. Yeah.
So then I wonder whether there's anything, you know, because obviously there's a recruitment crisis for EPs, just the same as there is for teachers and school leaders. Whether rather than spending more on the locums, whether we were able to put more into, or, you know, make the package better in some way, given the restrictions that we have, so that we're better placed to attract EPs long term, and particularly for the senior posts that we're struggling with at the moment.
Yes. it's difficult, isn't it, to where we are at the moment in terms of sort of the EHC processes, the backlogs, etc. It's not a massively attractive part to come as an EP, knowing the time's going to be demanding and things like that. But certainly where I would like to move to in the future is I've been really fortunate to work with sort of 10 different local authorities and been able to see different ways of working in different local authorities. And I've certainly got some ideas about how we can better use EP advice in the future and better use where we can make that much more work smarter, I think, in terms of the capacity that we've got. I think going back to one of your points about making those applications with EP advice, that's certainly something that we need to look at in the future, and actually where is that necessity, and we need to really look through that working group about that statutory assessment application route and equally statutory the review route as well, because there's lots of different possibilities that we can do to work differently within those two routes, which will free up EP time to work smarter with school, maybe at the graduated approach or the inclusion stage, to maybe support more children rather than just like one child at a time, bigger, wider group. Group consultations. And I know the Education Psychology Service wanted to look at EP assistance, because I know lots of local authorities now are moving to the EP assistant route. So I know we're starting to consider that. I think where we are at the minute, the conversations that I've had with Sharon, the EP, we have vacancies on my team on the EHC side of things as well. But where we are at the minute, we are in this really in-depth, significant recovery project. And if we were to bring permanent staff in now, it would be unfair on the permanent staff to come and start at moment. And equally, it would just take away time from our project, because we're using interim staff, not across the board. We have to have a permanent team, but we're using our interim staff across the board to keep that pace on, because with interim staff, you can be much more sort of guiding and how you want work to be completed. So it would be wrong to do a permanent recruitment drive at this moment in time. To get rid of that recovery backlog, we're in a much more brighter situation. We have a better appeal rate to get people to come and work for us permanently. We can then start that recruitment drive. And also we need to look at the long-term sufficiency of the EP service and of the education healthcare service, because we've got that future demand for places. We know we've got that national increased demand on EHC plans. It will come regardless whatever we do. And we have to make sure that we have an EHC service that meets that long-term demand and is sustainable and doesn't keep accumulating these backlogs. We can't just keep going forward, then going back and forward and back. We need to have real stability and security for 5-year plans in place. So that's something that I'm looking to with different ways of working, because I think our processes and systems aren't right. And if you add more staff to a broken process, the process just gets worse and the outcome gets worse. We need to really go and have a look at our processes and systems first, make sure they are absolutely bang on, and then add the capacity that we need at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. But having those principals, so the principal EP and our senior EPs, those are really crucial appointments, and whatever we can do to make it as an attractive package as we can. And other local authorities do that though, don't they? Whether it be a relocation package or be a thing, I don't know, golden handshake or something. But those are options for us that might help us to recruit at the level we want to.
And I think the attractive part at the minute is we're in this redesign stage. We're getting all stakeholders on board. We're going to get parents and families part of the process, get really co-designing with schools, etc., get working groups going. So this is a real blank canvas to be able to really design a service moving forward. And I think that's quite attractive for some education psychologists who would want to be part of that project.
Yeah. Can I say as well, I think it's important that Walsall have lost a lot of good staff over the last few years, I think. And I'm hoping that we have actually done exit interviews with these people, so that we can see where Walsall falls down and we lose so many good people. Because I think it's really important that it's not only getting these people in, we've got to retain them, haven't we? We've got to give them a position that they want to stay. So I think it's very important that we look at why we lose people, as well as how we get new ones.
Hi Judith, just a quick, before I move to you, Chris, just a quick addition onto what Kathy was saying. A few years ago we offered the concept of us buying or having our own educational psychologist as a larger group of schools, and as a way of retaining them, because obviously they would then work for us, and then you could retain them as any other sort of staff that works at schools. And it's a different kind of working environment, isn't it? And would that be something that the local authority would also consider? That would, like a collective school having their own EP, but obviously that EP would then be able to do would work alongside or work with a local authority, because it doesn't. There's nowhere on the code of practice that says it has to be a local authority EP, is there?
No, not at all. And there's also we get sort of drawn down the idea of an EP report, when actually the code of practice doesn't say we need a report either. It's information and advice. So we do have to really think about how we use that. But I think in terms of that question, I'd probably want to divert that to Sharon in terms of any sort of strategy or way of working to be discussed at a higher level.
I've moved now to you, Chris. You've waited like age. I think you've aged. You've waited that long.
No, to be honest, I could have asked my question at the beginning. It kind of goes on to the point Leslie was making. Jude, I just wanted to clarify on. I want to make sure that I've got my correct understanding of this. So the target for the completion of the EHCPs is 60 to 80%. Is that correct?
No, so our timeliness target is 60%. So
Okay.
we want to have all our new statutory assessments operating around 60%. The national average has just dropped slightly to about 56%. We're aiming for 60%. We're doing absolutely everything we can to get to that 60%, and it's starting to creep up, which is good news. Over the last 2 weeks, we're starting to see some increases in that, and the ways that we're working is very, very different. So our timeliness by the 1st of April, we are hoping is 60%. Our recovery backlog that we have, we want all of those cases to be a draft stage or issue stage, so that we are ready to issue those as final plans with a placement, etc. Some of the difficulties we have in kind of going from draft to final is the placement problem that we know is part of the placement review as well. So our recovery plans, we hope they will all be at draft or final, and our new live assessments that are coming through sort of every day, day after day, will be at 60%.
Because I guess where my sort of question and comment comes from is that last year, I know we've only got up to November, but that was only achieved on 3 months of last year from what this information says. I appreciate that the national average might be 56%, but that's quite, that's still saying that half of children nationally are not having that time scale met for them for their individual needs. Have we set the bar too low, and is that target going to be reviewed? I'm just thinking about it from a school perspective. You'd never set a child an attendance target of 60% to achieve, because they'd still be missing 2 days a week of school. I know that's probably a crude comparison, but that if we're trying to improve things and we're going to have another inspection on this, is that enough?
I think the reason why the national average is as it is because it doesn't just come down to one team. So the education and healthcare team are coordinating the process. They pull all the information together and write that plan. The drafting of the plan, the quality assurance of the plan, is actually the most easiest part of the process. The difficult bit is that we're reliant on advice and information from lots of professionals. So EPs, speech and language, occupational therapy, health, social care, and all of those parts of the jigsaw have to come together in that 20 weeks in order to deliver that EHC plan. The EHC team are only as good as the contributions that come into that 20 weeks. And the reason why the national average is that it is because there's so many dependence on all those people giving the information at the right time to draft that EHC plan by the team and to get the quality assured and to get it issued. Then the issuing stage, we then come to the placement problems. So we know we've got placement problems in Walsall. It's a national issue with specialist placements. So again, you then have a draft plan that you're trying to finalise, but we're trying to finalise without a placement, and there are no places available. So that is why the national average is as it is, and we are the same victims within this circle. So the education healthcare team, we have absolutely re-looked at our processes and our systems and are working in a very different way. The next part of that is then I need to go and explore all the contributors to the process, education, health and social care partners, to make sure that they understand their part of the processes, their roles and responsibilities and their duties, and actually is there issues within that link between the services. So do we need a template for advice, or do we need a different way of working? Do we need training, clarity, etc.? Because we know we have issues in terms of our 6-week duty from education, health and social care partners coming into the EHC team. If all partners hit their 6-week duty and we had a placement at the end of it, we would be issuing within about 14 weeks. We'd have no problems. but the issues are sort of external to the education and healthcare team. Once we've evaluated ours and got us in a better place, we then need to sort of explore the wider links in order to keep that tenderness going up. Once we explored those wider links, there's no reason whatsoever why we can't be hitting 18, 19, 95%. I've been in local authorities where we've put to 18% and I've got up to 80%. But it does take time. It is a bit like changing the Titanic, because it is so many parts of the process involved with so many different people and so many different teams that it does take a while for that to come together and move in the right direction.
And you know, I fully appreciate what you say, what you're saying there, Jude, and you know, I do take that on board, and I'm hopefully I'm right in thinking that what you're saying is actually the two bits that are major hurdles at the moment are the getting the advice from the right agencies and then the placements at the end. And totally accept that. I just, you know, we're 2 years down the line in terms of, I think it's 2 years down the line since we had the initial inspection in Walsall, and it doesn't sit quite right with me that we're not at the stage where we're meeting our own target and let alone national average, even if that is 56% at this point, based on the average of an average from last year. You know, I am worried, and the only other thing I'll ask, if it's okay, Max, that if we have am I right and correct in thinking that at the moment Walsall's advice for whether they issue the plan or not, that's solely relying on, or primarily relying on the EP's report? Is that what you would?
No, it's a multi-agency approach. So we need the reports that give us the information advice over the child. But if we've already got the information advice, i.e. if we've already got an EP report or already got a health report or social care report, then we use that as part of the statutory assessment. So in a case where a school, a SENCO, has maybe been very proactive and has front-loaded the statutory assessment, then our statutory assessment, we don't have to stick to 6 weeks, 16 weeks and 20 weeks. We can do it as fast as we possibly can for children. Certainly something that I want to look at, some of our most vulnerable children, and making sure that we expedite those statutory assessments through at faster timescales, really, that we don't have to take it to 6 weeks and 16 weeks and 20 weeks. We can do everything a lot faster. One of the examples of that is that we've totally transformed our decision making, and schools will start to get on board with this and start to get some training about how that's going to change. But one of the things we really need to do is get parents and children as part of their decision making, so that the panel, sort of the closed doors behind panels, etc., is much more transparent and open with families, and having open conversations about aspirations and future steps. And we can start to do sort of now, next, and later planning with the family.
It's not an easy process, and I'm not pretending that there is a quick fix for anything. And you know, appreciate Sally's comment in the chat as well that COVID has had a huge impact on it. You know, I suppose it's our job at Forum to kind of ask these challenging questions and hold people to account, isn't it?
I think that, Chris, there's also, and I know Jude, we just mentioned it earlier, there's also some of those advisory reports from some of the advisory services have also been accepted as part of that EHCP thing, and several EHCPs. So that's something I think if Jude, again, if we have a chat with myself and Kate, we can have a talk about how we can help maybe speed up some of those processes to help get those figures down a little bit, you know, by providing the right sort of reports. Kathy, are you your hand up from the last time, or is it another one?
No, it's a new one because I hadn't finished. No, it's only quickie. And Jude, this one's for you. And it was something that a colleague suggested, actually, and just reading through this, I thought, oh, that's where it fits. So looking at the pathways, and it mentions just on the milestone one, assessment team, review team, clear on processes, staff working on scheme of delegation, clarify decision-making levels and outcomes, and so on. It'd be really useful for us to have that information in school, just an overview of what does that look like, because I don't understand it and I'm dealing with it every day. And then I'm also really confused by who's who, and I think all of us are. So then what ends up happening is that heads don't know, or SENCOs aren't always clear who it is that they need to go to talk about it, to ask something. So I know quite often we're tending to go to Alex, for example, whereas actually having the right route to go and knowing the right person to go to ask the question would probably, you know, make it all much more streamlined. So I think the colleague who mentioned it to me talked about it as a family tree. So what does the organisation look like? Because I think that's unclear to us. That would be really great if we could.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. In terms of the schools, I have a plan to do some sort of briefing sessions really with the schools next month for half term. We'll break up half term, maybe just an hour and a half of just explaining where we are, what's happening, some of the newer processes, the schema delegation that you just mentioned there, because I know one of the big things that parent groups talk about is wanting a representative there at annual review meetings, and I know schools want people there, so that's something I'm trying to work out. How can we, and that schema delegation is part of that, but how we can get people actually in on the meetings and attendant, whether it's virtual or face to face, but having somebody there.
Lovely, thank you. You've earned a big glass of wine after this.
Thank you. Good questions, Kath, and also well done, colleagues. Some poor Jude. There was a lot of questions there for you today. You're on your own.
Stock taken answers, but I will get, if those are gathered and sent to Sharon or Helen, then I'm sure those questions will be answered.
Just one thing to add. Just one last thing, like Columbo. You know, it said here, milestone 3 said there's 750 missing annual review paperwork bits. What does that refer to? Is that schools, other agencies and schools?
Yes, so I can understand why it's happened, and I can understand over the time that schools have worked really hard and sent to local authority, and the local authority haven't acted on it. And I think over time they've maybe felt, well, if you're not going to bother, why should I, kind of thing. I absolutely understand how the situation has occurred. But yeah, so we have a backlog of about 1,000, and half of that are children that haven't had review paper sent in from schools. So without that review paperwork, we can't process the review. But then I think we need to look at the review paperwork, because again, I've worked in local authorities where they don't have review papers, because recognising Senko time is so precious. Is there a better way of using that time in a more cost-effective kind of way, rather than filling and duplicating a form? And I think quite often the review paper, you end up reviewing the review rather than reviewing the EHC plan. And we need to keep that EHC plan at the absolute fore of planning. Of that's the legal document, that's the plan, that's the now, next, later, that's the aspirations. But instead of like the SEN support plan should be the application for an EHC statutory assessment, then review the EHC plan should be the review the EHC plan, not review the review. And these are all things that I've had experience of working elsewhere, that I've really talked to Senkos about and get some ideas, get some working parties, get some trials going, and seeing how Senkos feel about doing things differently.
Thanks, Jude. Councillor Toe.
I just want to say there's been lots of questions during this hour's discussion. It's been a long discussion. I'm sure Sharon will review the recording and maybe give an appropriate response. I have to say, it's not just an LA problem. It's everyone must play their part to get this sorted out. Clearly, it comes back. A lot of it comes back onto the LA's shoulders, but clearly it's not just LA. The local authority. It's everyone needs to play their part. I mean, we're committed to getting a long-term solution to this issue, and obviously short-term as well, medium as well as long-term. And therefore, I appreciate the support Kathy and Kate are giving us, and the work that Jude's doing to make this happen. I'm totally committed to getting it sorted for you all, and just watch this space. We get there. Well, I thought, particularly on plans, we cracked it middle of the year. And I think I said so at Schools Forum meeting. And it's disappointing we've gone backwards over the last few months, but clearly we are committed to getting it sorted out, and rest assured, members of the forum, that we will do so.
Thank you, Councillor Toe. Any other comments for Jude? Questions? You'll be pleased to know, Jude, that section is over, and we'll move on to section 8, which is the final school funding formula, final mainstream school funding formula. Now, for this one there, I'm looking at the bottom. This report says provides an update on the changes that have been required to the formula endorsed by Schools Forum in October 2021, and seeks Schools Forum endorsement of this revised formula. Lloyd, can you discuss what the revisions are to the agreed formula?
Certainly, Chair. So, if possible at all, though, Richard Wally is on the call. So, Richard, with Dawn now retiring from the authority, has taken on the role that Dawn was doing. So, it's Richard and his officers who've prepared the detail for the report. So, I think he's happy to take forum through the changes, and they are only small changes to what you agreed in October. So if I hand over to Richard, and then I'm obviously here as well if there are any questions following Richard's update.
Thanks, Lloyd. Over to you, Richard.
Okay, thank you. So the report has set out does indicate that the school spot funding increased by 10.324 million compared to 21-22. There's been a few changes through that. So the allocation the 22-23 allocation is based on the October 21 census, which has shown an increase in pupil numbers of 1.3% year on year. And within that, preschool meal numbers have also increased by 11% overall, which is 9% primary and 15% secondary. The confirmed increase in funding has allowed all funding factor values to increase by at least 2.4%, as agreed with Schools Forum and Cabinet in October 21. And the only difference between the proposal and this final formula is that inflation increase applied to low prior attainment has actually increased by 2.5% rather than 2.4%. So it's just a 0.1% increase over what we modelled back in October. Minimum funding guarantees remained at 0.5%. And overall, Chair, that's the only difference to what was modelled at the time. So we've updated, obviously, for changes in pupil numbers based on the October 21 census. Minimum funding guarantee at 0.5%. Mean that all schools will see an increase in per pupil funding when compared to 21-22, and that lower prior attainment has seen an extra 0.1% of inflation.
Okay, so in that case, it says there's no formal vote required. It says here it's just a report on the changes, but it says here schools endorsement of the final formula is set out on Appendix A and the recommendation. So although there's no formal vote, Richard, what is it that you're requiring from us as forum members with regards to this then? So
at the October Cabinet meeting, delegated authority was given to Sally and Councillor Toe to agree any final changes. What we require from forum is just to note the report, just raise any issues. Other than that, we just recommend that Councillor Toe and Sally are okay with the revised funding factors. Okay, so we'll note that then. Are there any comments or questions for Richard? Kathy, is that an old one or a now one?
It's a new one. Not a question. It's just a reminder for colleagues really. So when we had all of the conversations around this, what we agreed, didn't we, was that when we knew what the budget share was for the coming year, that we would reform the funding formula working group so that we could look at what the implications were over time, with a consultation back as well, so that when we're all budget setting, when we're setting our 3-year budgets, we're better informed about what that's going to look like longer term. So really we need to be thinking about that group starting up again. I know it's only just finished, but it needs to start up again really, doesn't it?
Yeah, Lloyd, when does the outcomes, Lloyd and Richard, the outcome of the government's consultation, when's that due to come out?
So I think that was the only part I just wanted to flag up. So Kathy, you're quite right. That discussion that we had in October was we would reconstitute the funding formula working group as soon as possible once we both understood the budget allocations for 22-23, which we've now got with the revised funding formula with that minor tweak that Richard's just referred to. I think the other point that we needed to support that working group is that which the chair has just referred to, which is the outcome of the government's consultation on finalising the implementation of the national funding formula. We've not yet had that outcome. It is expected imminently. So I believe, based on the conversation we had in October, it would be beneficial just to wait for that final outcome, because that should give some direction in terms of that working group and where we're likely to end up in future years with government implementation of the national funding formula or not.
How would we know when that's coming? Is that something that you'd know routinely, Lloyd?
Yes. So as soon as government have considered all of the consultation feedback, they flag that to all local authorities with their final response to that consultation. So we would be aware of it we have weekly updates from the DFE and the SFA. So it will be included within one of those or within a special feedback from them. And as soon as that's available, we don't need to wait for a schools forum meeting. I think we agreed in October that the working group constituents, as they were, would form part of that revised working group. So we could just simply follow up with an email to the people who are part of that working group to confirm we've had the outcome and agree a start date for those meetings to reconvene.
Lovely, thank you.
And thanks, Lloyd. Any other questions? No, fab. Then we'll move on to then an actual one we do actually have to vote on, which is the approval of central expenditure budgets for 22-23. Richard and Lloyd, I'm going to pass you over just for a quick. Everyone will have read them, but just a quick overview in case anyone's not clear on what they're voting on here.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So the report sets out the central school services budget for 22-23, which is an increase of 102k compared to 21-22. So now stands at 1.663 million. Just a reminder that CSSB funding currently funds school admissions, servicing of schools forum, licences for schools, the music support service, and the statutory duties of the authority. That's kind of set out in Table 1. Table 2 sets out proposed central budgets to be retained from the early years block of DSG, and there's a separate report coming to March schools forum on the early years funding formula. But that's quite a quick overview of the report, Chair. Any questions that would be grateful to take? You're on mute, Chair.
Sorry, Tim, you've got a question.
Yeah, it's not really a question, it was an observation, but obviously in terms of the central early years expenditure, it's really welcomed that the authority is not choosing to retain the full 5%, which is the maximum allowed to be kept, because that will ensure that more money goes into the direct hourly rate for those children in receipt of 2, 3 and 4 year old funding. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. And I could say, yeah, the position set out there, as you've highlighted, has been consistent since the national early years funding formula came into place. So we've not sought to increase that central funding for early years since the national early years funding formula came in. So what we're recommending there is in line with previous years, as you quite rightly pointed out, to try and maximise the amount of funding that does go through to frontline providers.
Okay, so is there any other questions before we move on to so? No, I can't see any. So this is for Schools Forum to approve the proposed central expenditure for 22-23 as determined by ESFA and set out in the school and early years finance regulations. Can we do a roll call, please, Neil?
Yeah, sure, Chair. Not a problem. Okay, if members can just declare whether they're for or against the recommendation. So, Chair, over to you.
For.
Andy Seeger.
For.
Kathy Draper.
For.
Jenny Garrett.
For.
Sean Davies.
For.
Mark Moody. Mark Moody. Okay. Siobhan Bowen. Siobhan. Okay. Leslie Foster.
For.
Michael Fox.
For.
Christine Fraser.
For.
Ian Baker.
For.
Elise Phillips.
For.
Chris Berry.
For.
Stephen Pritchard Jones.
For.
I think that concludes it, but have I missed anyone? No, I think that's
just myself, Neil, and I would have been for.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Brilliant. So that's been agreed. So then we'll move on now then to the forward plan. Thank you, Chris. The forward plan. And obviously the forward plan, looking at there, we've got the stuff that Kathy has just said about having a standing send recruit from I think it was from the strategy group, wasn't it, Kath? Is that what you were saying? from the strategic implementation group. Is that what you were saying you wanted added onto the forward?
You're making up group names now.
So
Specialist
many strategic groups of this and SES.
Specialist Provision Review Group, but it makes sense to feed it into the whole send update, I think. But if we can have as well for forward planning, high needs funding updates as well, please.
I should have just asked you to say those different groups on there, instead of trying to muddle through them. So can we add those groups, please, Neil?
Yes, Chair, I've got those.
Is there anything else that needs to be added, colleagues? Obviously, when if we could, when we eventually meet for that, that's the funding group, the future funding group, that will need to be an item on later. Sort of, if there's the June meetings, etc., because I'm assuming we'll have met before June. Just an update on that would be something I think useful as well. Okay, there were no items raised under item 5, because we discussed high needs funding, etc. at that point. So and I haven't had any other late items. Neil, any late items coming your way?
Nothing received, Chair.
In that case, dates of future meetings. Now, we've got the next one. It's an unusual one because we're changing it to the 9th of March from the 8th of March. So that makes it on a Wednesday. Very exciting times we leave. But so we're going to have it on the 9th of March at 4 p.m. So the next meeting's 9th of March 2022 at 4 p.m. And then another future meeting for your diaries, 21st of June 2022 at 4 p.m. with the next 2 meetings. Fabulous. Hope everybody has a safe journey home. Keep yourself safe from COVID, etc. And we'll see you all in March. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Max.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.